We've had some time travelers the last several weeks, and so we have another time-traveling guest from the Old Testament. Don't worry, it's not Deborah. That would be scary. But the character is a very good friend of Deborah, and luckily, he doesn't cause as much traffic on the west side as his namesake. So I invite Mr. Vermaak.
Angelo said it is important for us to recognize and celebrate our heroes and our sheroes. Now, you don't often read about women in the Bible. They often go unmentioned and unnamed. And so, I am Vermaak, and I have a good friend, Deborah the Wise, who is an amazing heroine. She is the original Marvel Comics heroine, better than Catwoman. And this is what happened. This is the scoop on our adventure, how we achieved the greatest military victory in our people's history. In the time, we had taken over the Promised Land, and we had two perpetual enemies, the Canaanites and the Philistines. And between those two groups of people, they would subjugate us. At this point of time, it was the Canaanites. Now, the Canaanites had a very distinct advantage on us. They had chariots. I'm not talking about the sweet chariot you just sang about. I'm talking about these bad monsters. The chariots that the Hyksos invented and came all the way down to Egypt, destroyed the Pharaoh's army, and took over Egypt. The Canaanites learned how to build these bad boys, made of wrought iron, and they ruled the country. And because the Canaanites had this advantage, we were just mere farmers. We could not stand up to them. All our highways, nobody there. We had to grow our crops, secretly harvest it, and take it back to our cities. There was perpetual hunger and famine and food shortage. Whenever you were stopped, you never knew you would walk out alive or not. It is terrible living for 20 years under siege by the Canaanites. But then God had a plan. You see, Deborah was a prophetess. And part of being a prophetess, and there were only 4 women prophetesses in the Bible, is that God spoke to you. And that people would come to you because they believed that God gave wisdom and insight and knowledge to you. Just like people went to the oracle at Delphi to hear what the divine had to say to them. But Deborah also was a judge. She also was a female leader within our community who gathered the people around her and gave wisdom from God. And so it happened on this day that Deborah said, I was sitting under my palm tree, divining and giving people a message from God, when God spoke to me and said, Deborah, you need to call Vermaak. You need him to get 10,000 troops together, go up Mount Tabor, wait for the sign. I'll draw out the army of Sisera, who is the military commander of the Jabin the king, and I will give you a victory. And of course, my reaction was, are you kidding me? 10,000 of us against 900 chariots with their sword bearers, with their archers. We don't stand a chance. And she said, but God is guaranteeing the victory. Just trust. Just have faith. Well, I didn't trust, and I didn't have the faith. I mean, I had done some skirmishes with the Canaanites, but lead 10,000 people to their death, this was a foolhardy plan. You can't go down from Mount Tabor to the Wadi Kidron, which is a dry riverbed, exactly the place where the Canaanite war machines, the chariots, have the advantage. We'd be slaughtered. And we don't have weapons. We're farmers. We don't have any military training. How could we ever fight them? And I was adamant I would do it on one condition. You go with me. You go with me and you convince 2 of the tribes to join us. You convince these farmers that there is a soldier in them and that through them God is going to give delivery. And she was just as adamant, saying, okay, but then the victory is not going to be yours. It will be another woman's. And so we went. We went to the tribes. We convinced them. We had meetings with the farmers. And would you believe it? You could literally see God's Spirit at work as people were convinced that they could do this. The farmers melted down their farming implements and made spears and swords. And people got ready for battle. And on that specific day, we led up the 10,000 troops up on Mount Tabor. And we took our position on the high ground. And Sisera had heard that we were gathering forces, and he gathered his troops with his 900 iron chariots and soldiers. And they were lying in wait for us. And he must have thought, we are the stupidest army in the history of military warfare. We were like lambs to the slaughter. We were going to rush down the mountain to where he has the advantage. We stood no chance. And on Deborah's command, we blew the shofar, the ram's horn. And we shouted our cry and we stormed down the mountain. And we could see the army down below getting ready. And then it happened. Lightning from end to end of the valley. Thunderclap so loud you had to close your ears. It didn't rain. It was like God took open the storehouses of heaven and just opened up the floodgate and poured all of that water down onto that army down below. It was utter chaos. I mean, there were horses slipping in the mud, overturning the chariots. There were horses trying to get away, and the chariots got stuck in the mud. And I mean, we just stopped. It was unbelievable what God was doing. We didn't have to lift a finger. And next, all this water ran down from the mountainside, gathered at the basin of the wadi, and a brown snake of water came crumbling through, washing away the chariots and the archers and the swordsmen and the soldiers and the horses. An entire army destroyed. Now it was apparent what God's plan was. It wasn't our victory, it was God's victory. I think we were just the bait. Just the bait to lure Sisera to that place where he thought that he was in control and that he would have the victory. Of course, as luck would have it, Sisera escaped. He ran all day long and got to Heber's tent, one of his allies. Heber's wife Jael gave him food and gave him a place to sleep and said she would watch out after him. And from pure exhaustion, he fell asleep. Well, she took a tent peg and whacked it through his skull. It's in the Bible. And again, Deborah's prophecy was fulfilled. A woman would have the victory. Jael would slay the mightiest warlord of her time. A tent-dwelling, unimportant woman. Yeah, it sucks a little bit. Okay, quite a bit that I didn't get the victory. They didn't sing songs about me, but about Jael. But the good news is that the other 10 tribes heard about our victory. They joined us, and together as the tribes of God, we destroyed the enemy that had ruled over us for 20 years. And for the next 40 years, we had peace. Until those pesky Philistines. But that's for Samson's sermon. You see, Deborah used her brain, not her brawn, like Samson. And what seemed impossible for God is not impossible. So let me ask you, who or what is the 900 chariots bearing down on your life? What are the 1,800 galloping horses that are storming towards you? What instills fear in you? Is it maybe that your kids or grandkids don't share your faith? They are not as committed as you are to God and to the things of God? Is it maybe that our country is becoming more and more secular? And we're trying to find, where does faith and Christianity fit into this? Or maybe that as a Christian nation, we don't want to acknowledge the fact that we have racism, and we have hatred, and we have people unnecessarily die. Or as a nation, it's so easy for us to send men and women to war, but when they come back, we don't know how to integrate them back into society, to care for them. That tens of millions of people that are family of veterans are affected by this. That the streets of our city over this summer will swell to 100,000 people that are homeless. Are the chariots and the horses bearing down on us, that the social ills of this world are just too big. There's too many hungry, too many homeless, too many poor, too many without a country, too many. And who am I? What is my church? Even if we are 10,000, it seems like we can't make a difference. We throw money and resources at something, and then the LA Times comes back and says, oh yeah, by the way, homelessness in our city, 12% up over the past year, despite spending countless millions. Oh, and homelessness among women, 85% up. 85% more homeless women on our street. Does it cause fear in you? Of course it does. We feel like, yeah, God, you are there, but we don't have the power or the strength to do anything about it. We can't change our world. Well, God said to Deborah, I know you cannot defeat the 900 chariots, but trust me, I have a plan. Each one of us is one of those 10,000 that in faith have to act, have to melt down and say, I'm going to take a chance. I'm going to risk the reward that maybe Deborah is right, that maybe God is powerful and almighty, and maybe me going to serve a meal, hammer a nail, or just visit somebody will make a difference. The world might call it foolishness. We call it faith. Blind faith. Blind faith storming down, not knowing what lies behead, until God surprises and steps in. I'm Barak. And through my wise friend Deborah, we have seen God at work. I pray God will be at work at your life as well. Amen.